viewers, and welcome to Halo 3, the conclusion of this one. Oh boy. I did the first video of this, our third in the Halo franchise, obviously, and I said, I found the cinematic big set pieces a little boring, not because of the fault of the game, and that was the important thing. The fact of the matter is this kind of set the standard, as did other games at the time. You know, we had Half-Life and all those things flying around. And I can't help that I've seen that stuff for like a decade plus now, if not longer, with these big over-the-top set pieces where you kind of play second fiddle. So I came into it after a couple of days break because of the WoW housing with a bit of a fresh eyes and willing to be like, okay, this is a different game than Halo 1 and 2. This is not working the same way. Now, I want to be clear on something because I did a bit of research after I finished Halo 3. I did a little reading, going back in the time machine of the internet to find out certain things. And one of the main things that I picked up on was that by this point, when Halo 3 arrives, Halo as a franchise had grown way beyond Master Chief. Like, way, way beyond. In fact, it was the beginnings of what I see now, and is actually very obvious now, of the end of the idea of the campaign, really. And it was a massive multiplayer focus for the developers, which is fine, because Halo was overwhelmingly the multiplayer game people wanted. This was the first game on the 360 for Halo, and the 360, for those of us who were there when the 360 was coming out, its main core selling point was the multiplayer functionality. I think it was Quake Territories or something like that that was the launch title for the 360, which was just boasting like 60 or 100 player maps. It was terrible. But the multiplayer aspect was everything. And surely for Microsoft and Bungie or whatever, that was where the money was to be made, because now we were entering the era, instead of, certainly with Halo 2, where people would buy a game and they would play it for like a few months, and then it would have a shelf life. It would have a natural end life. And perhaps for some people who weren't alive then, or gaming at that point, that might sound unusual, but it was very normal in the era of like the SNES up all the way up to the 360, is that you bought a game with a natural shelf life on it at a beginning, middle, and an end. And there was no DLC, there was no patches or anything like that. It would just be, that's it. That's the game done. You can 100% it. You know, we see that with like the Final Fantasy games, is there's lots of extras to do, so you can throw hundreds of hours at the game, but it has an ending and it's done. That era is now gone, and the idea was to just keep you online and keep you playing all the time. That is, you are going to be this. You know, that was the era of like World of Warcraft. This is your game, as it would be my game for the next 10 years. You know, that's it. You didn't really touch anything else. And they wanted in on that in the console world. And so a lot of the stuff that came with Halo 3 was actually just multiplayer focused. And that's very, very obvious, including in the campaign. One of the things that really bothered me about the campaign was how relegated the Arbiter was. Now, if Halo was a purely story campaign-focused game, my read on that would be that the reception to the sort of twist in Halo 2 of the Arbiter becoming kind of the primary character and Master Chief taking a seat, which is what I discussed during that. It was very obvious, is like, oh, there's not much of a story to tell with a not silent protagonist, but, you know, he's big military man and they do military stuff. Not that interesting from a writer's perspective, unless you really want to go dark and deep with it. You know, there's lots of great military stories out there. But that's not the nature of these games. It's shooty, shooty, bang, bang against little aliens that do cutesy little, like, oh no, they're getting me. Doesn't really fit that well. And so they went with the Arbiter instead, where they could tell that kind of story, where they they had the political upheaval, the separation of the brutes and the elites, how the Arbiter and the Great Journey was a lie. They had all that depth and interest going on with the Arbiter, but not so much with Master Chief. But it was noticeable that Master Chief, who is the star of the show, was like in the backgrounds. In Halo 3, the Arbiter is completely relegated to a side character, has no real focus whatsoever, and is essentially just along for the ride. And then you find out, oh, actually, that's the co-op multiplayer character. Similar to Dead Space 3 in that regard, is like, well, yes, the Arbiter is a character that's the other couch guy can play, but it's the Master Chief show from this point going forward, and they fall into the trap. So I'm going to be looking at this with the single player in mind. Okay, I'm aware of people having the most exceptional times playing Halo 3 with their friends, then going into multiplayer for thousands of hours and doing everything in that regard. But I'm going to look at this from the campaign point of view. And it's disappointing. It is disappointing. It's disappointing because there's essentially no story in Halo 3. Some people are a little shocked by that, but when we talked about it, it's like there really isn't much of a story in Halo 3 at all whatsoever. It's more of a showcase in many ways for the technology and getting you... almost a multiplayer tutorial is what I would say. They're going to give you a huge variety of weapons. They're going to give you as many vehicles as possible. They're going to put you in some cool set pieces where you're going to have to learn to drive and play around with all the resource kits, you know, the regens and the auto turrets and things like that. Not to say that isn't a story. It's just exceptionally thin. The story of Halo 3, in summary, is that it's essentially the last chapter of Halo 2 stretched out into one longer campaign. It's almost like the last... if I'm being generous, it's the last quarter of the Halo 2 campaign. You are now... the Arbiter has done his stuff, right? That's done. So now we're going to follow what happened with the ships arriving at Earth with Master Chief. The Covenant has found Earth, right? And we've got this leader of the Covenant, the Truth, the Prophet of Truth, who wants to take them on the great journey. And he thinks he's sussed out how to do that. And he has, by opening a big portal over Mombasa, and they end up at a place called the Ark. And the Ark is a big-ass platform. Essentially, it's the Halo factory, the Halo Rings factories, part of its functionality at least. But it's outside of the galaxy. It's on the galaxy's rim, which makes it conveniently safe for them to detonate a Halo ring out there and deal with the flood. And you follow along. You follow along to put a stop to their evil machinations. And that's essentially it. And Cortana's missing. The story plays out with you kind of logically end up working with the Flood because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Very simple stuff. To stop Truth from detonating all the rings because that'll kill all the Flood in the galaxy as well. So the Gravemind doesn't want that. And you don't want that either. So you work together, and then when that's done, the Gravemind's like, but haha, I'm still a jerk. So I'm going to put you down, and you stop that. And you have the culmination of the ship being torn in half, so the Arbiter gets back to Earth, but Master Chief and Cortana do not, and end up adrift in space. And Master Chief just goes into a deep sleep, goes into hibernation, until he is needed yet again, which would be Halo 4. Well, that's really it. In terms of any depth or any sort of nuance, which we did have in Halo 2, that's not there. It's really an excuse to set up some major set pieces and show off the fact that they made like scarabs. And so the boss fights in the game are scarab, 2 scarabs, and show you the planes and things. It's really beautiful. I want to say that. The game is absolutely beautiful. And coming back and playing it with that more modern perspective was really beneficial to me because I had a lot more fun the second half rather than going directly from 2 to 3, which I did in the same day. I finished 2 and then went straight into 3, and I was like, oh, I'm in the like mood for 2, which is still shooty, but a lot more story and stuff and intrigue going on, to 3, which was more blasty action John Rambo style, right? And I was like, oh, this is a really stark contrast to what I had with 2. It was, while it was disappointing, there's a lot of indication here of what they were trying to achieve and where it should go. But also very apparent that they knew there was not much going on. And so they had to be a little weird, which raised more questions than answers. Certainly with Cortana. Like throughout the game, you're constantly getting these bizarre sort of ghostly, almost horror movie-esque visions of Cortana, saying very odd things. And as the game proceeds, it starts to intertwine with the Gravemind, which then led to some really interesting ideas, which I thought they were going to explore, which is the Gravemind is, although it's like a biological virus, it can also be a techno-virus, and it's actually infecting Cortana and trying to assimilate her into its sort of hive mind. But Cortana, as it starts to get disruptive, is Cortana is able to fight back and actually protect herself. Very interesting choice of having, like, Cortana, the AI, like, on her knees, lay down, like, exhausted, battered and bruised, obviously representing that she's under attack, but then stands up. So I was really looking forward to the payoff for this. You know, we've been having these visions for a long time. There isn't any. Like, at all. In fact, when we find Cortana, we just find her in a room and we're like, oh, I've got Cortana now. And then she's like back to 100%. Like, oh, I'm fine now. Let's get on with it. And nobody raises any questions. No one asks, hey, what was all that going on with like the Gravemind and all these visions? Did you have some sort of like residual link to me? Were you reaching out to me? Something along those lines, which she is, and it's implied, and we can read that. But there's no discussion of it whatsoever. It's completely glossed over. And it's almost... And this happens a lot in games now that have a low budget. This didn't, but it's an idea that has been moved forward with games with a low budget that can't do like these massive, AAA standard things, is they generally throw something odd into the game to create oddness, kind of for the sake of it. And that's what I took away from this. Is like, okay, I think we're just going to... I kind of suspected as we got towards the end, like, I think we're just going to gloss this over, and we did. And then maybe in the future, in almost a Realm Reborn to Heavensward style, the writers have quite a while until Halo 4 to sort of remedy things. Because one thing I'm picking up with Halo in general is very swift, almost Blizzard-esque axes to fan feedback of what's going on. So they took a risk with Halo 2 when it was still early-ish days. Halo's doing well, but we can still take some risks and do that switch to the Arbiter so we could tell a better story. And I check, and fan reaction at the time in the online discourse was like, where is Master Chief? Why are we dealing with this alien guy? I want Master Chief. And so then, the result is this moves away. But people were clearly into the action. I mean, Halo was designed for teenage boys. I think that's fair to say. And they want shooty tanks and blowy. All good. Fine. But it did lead to a sort of limp story. Beautiful, gorgeous, very action-packed. The gameplay is fantastic. Really fun gameplay. Much smoother. Miles better just weapon design, travel distance on bullets and stuff like that. All those issues I had with shooting in Halo 2 are all gone. And it's clearly the advancement of the genre. It absolutely is. Just a shame that the story then falls a little on the thin side. Trying to pull off some epic moments that are a little undeserved. The death of certain characters and that kind of thing, not great. And the boss fights, the Scarabs are the best part of it. There's a final boss fight with your robot friend, but it's just a floating target. Doesn't do anything. It is what it is. They've never been good with it. But overall, for me, in a general sense of playing from a single player point of view, looking to engage with the Halo story and understand who Master Chief is, what is this universe that has been such a huge part of many gamers' lives, Halo 3 was the weakest of the three so far. Which is, and it's not bad by any means. It's just, it's very, okay. The story is an excuse to show off what we can make, rather than that what we can make being in service to a story. That's what I would say here. But I enjoyed it for sure, and I certainly enjoyed the latter half more than I did the first time. Once I'd kind of flipped my mindset into it, I do prefer that they kept with the deeper story. But the next game that we started playing, to intrigue you a little bit, was Halo ODST. And I have very different thoughts about that one. So let's check out the next video. All right. Bye, guys.